Zach Wilson leads a thrilling 10-point comeback victory in his season debut. We have a Jets win to celebrate today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, October 3rd, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you for making this your first listen or first watch every day. This show's free, and it's available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you like what you see or hear, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening. You'll never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Today we are talking about a thrilling Jets victory. They beat the Steelers yesterday 24-20 in Pittsburgh. Zach Wilson leading a fourth-quarter comeback in his season debut. Jets even up their record at 2-2. I did not see this game live. If you've been following through the year, you know I've been doing post-game podcasts on Sunday afternoon after Jets games. I was traveling yesterday due to weekend plans, so I unfortunately was not able to post a post-game podcast yesterday afternoon. And of course, it could not happen when the Jets have a horrible loss like Baltimore or Cincinnati. Of course, it has to happen a week the Jets have such a thrilling victory. That's the game that I don't catch live. And I'm lucky I was here for Cleveland. Otherwise, people would be putting me on a train every single week. I did know the result, however, because I had a friend who was texting me, quote-unquote, non-spoiler updates through the game, and any one of them did not spoil the game, but combined, I got so many that I was able to piece together what happened, and last night I was able to watch just an absolutely thrilling comeback victory, and not only the fact the Jets won, but how they won it, with Zach Wilson delivering a magnificent fourth quarter. It was a game that was very back and forth. The Jets blew an early 10-point lead. Then they were down by 10 points. And what was frustrating was they were kind of responsible for their own demise in this game. Because they're up 10, they're up 10-3 heading to halftime. They're driving the ball, and Zach Wilson throws a bad interception. Now, the announcers on CBS were trying to absolve him of that one. That was a really bad interception, though, in my opinion. He really just kind of missed a defender he should have seen. And the Steelers still should not have done anything. They really did not have enough time to do anything, but the Jets commit a personal foul penalty. That sets up a field goal to make it 10-6, heading to the locker room. Then early in the second half, Zach's second interception sets up a go-ahead touchdown. Now, that one was not his fault. That one was our guy Tyler Conklin not bringing in a pass that hits him in the hands. Now, I think there are times where we underestimate how difficult it is to adjust to a ball that's off target. Just because a pass hits a receiver in the hands does not necessarily mean it should be caught. I think we underestimate how difficult it is to adjust to a pass in real time. When you're running a route, you're running hard, you have these big defenders bearing down on you trying to hit you. It's not so easy. These catches are not routine. You need an accurately thrown ball. This was not a situation where the accuracy of the throw should have impacted the catch. Tyler Conklin had nobody bearing down on him. He had to adjust. It was not a great throw, but it was still a routine catch, a catch that should be made 99 times out of 100. It hits him in the hands and pops up. The Steelers have an interception, then they score a touchdown. But really, the Steelers only had 2 drives that they sustained all game. They had a field goal drive in the first half, 10 plays. They had a touchdown drive in the second half, 12 plays that put them up 20-10. But outside of that, they really did not get much going on offense. And their points came from Jets' mistakes. It was frustrating because the Jets kind of gave this game back after having an early 10-point lead. But Zach Wilson stepped up and was it was probably the best he's played as a member of the New York Jets. I mean, you might point to the game against Tampa Bay last December. You may point to the game last year, I think it was week 4 against Tennessee. But this was just, the fourth quarter was an absolute clinic. Now, early in the game, I thought Zach was very up and down. I thought there were some good things and some bad things. Among the good things, I felt like his pocket movement was really improved. Last year, this was an area where he struggled quite a bit. Zach last year was running into sacks. He really could not feel pressure. He did not know when to bail on the pocket. He was frequently bailing early. In this game, it felt like he was navigating the pocket much better, and there was lots of pressure. The Jets' offensive line, which is no surprise, they had to reshuffle things. They moved Elijah Vera Tucker to left tackle. They had Nate Herbig playing right guard. They had an injury during the game. Max Mitchell had to leave, so Connor McDermott comes in. McDermott, who we thought was going to play left tackle, began the game on the bench. So Zach was under a lot of pressure in this game, and I thought he did a good job extending plays. And this is a big area of improvement, I thought, in this game, and that was a very encouraging sign. And you can just see the difference between Zach Wilson in there and Joe Flacco. Because when Joe Flacco's in there and there's pressure, the play's over. It's finished. Flacco, he may check it down, he may avoid a sack, but you're not going to get a productive play when Joe Flacco's under pressure. Zach Wilson, when he's moving like that, he's giving you a shot. Now, they missed some plays. They missed some opportunities. They did not have as many big plays as they could have. But Zach Wilson's giving you a shot. And that's kind of like the BYU Zach Wilson navigating the pocket. More like BYU Zach Wilson, less like rookie Zach Wilson's really struggling to navigate the pocket. The second area of the first three quarters I thought was much better was Zach was reading the run-pass options significantly better than a year ago. And that was an area of weakness last year. He was not really executing on run-pass options. But this time he saw his key guy, and usually with a run-pass option, you're pretty much responding to what one defender does. If one defender drops and plays the run, then you throw it behind him. If he drops back and he's not playing the run, then you just run it right at him. Zach was reading those a lot better than he was a year ago. And sometimes he was handing the ball off, and Breece Hall was, there was one third down play where he just handed it off on a run pass option, and Breece Hall was able to convert the third down on about a 3rd and 5 early in the game. So those were the two areas where he was really a lot better in the first three quarters. In the first three quarters, there were some areas where he was a little shaky. I thought the accuracy was not great again. I thought there were moments where he was kind of off target with his throws. I mean, there was one screen pass to Garrett Wilson where it was one of the things we saw last year, the fastball, at his feet. That was not very good. He missed Breece Hall on a deep pass where, he was again, avoiding pressure. He actually did a good job avoiding pressure running to his right. But if he stops and sets his feet, he could have Breece Hall for a long touchdown. I think the other area was, there were some shaky decisions. Now, that interception to Conklin, I put, maybe 5% on Zach. And that's the thing with interceptions. They always go on the quarterback's stat sheet, but they're not always responsible by the quarterback. However, there were a couple of high danger throws. He threw one into double coverage to Michael Carter that could have been interception. He underthrew a pass that could have been intercepted. And the first interception was on him. I think the decision-making was a little shaky. I think the accuracy was a little shaky the first three quarters. So some areas where Zach looked really good the first three quarters, much better. Some areas where, there maybe wasn't quite as much improvement as we were looking for. But those bad things, I think you throw them out based on what we saw in the fourth quarter. Because the way I think about it is every quarterback who's good in this league, their season has games that look differently. Now, you'll have a lot of games where you look great through four quarters. You want to see some of those from Zach in the upcoming schedule. But you also have games where you're kind of up and down through the first three quarters. But you shake it off in the fourth quarter, and you lead your team to a victory. And that's what Zach did, delivering 2 huge touchdown drives. And what was interesting about these drives is, we've been talking Garrett Wilson is the go-to guy because he's been off to such a great start. There's been, during the offseason, I thought it was going to be Elijah Moore who would be the go-to guy. It feels like Zach, in that fourth quarter at least, the guy he was looking for was Corey Davis, who had some huge catches on those 2 drives. There was a 4th and 7 on the Pittsburgh 39 with about 9.5 minutes left. If the Steelers get a stop there, the game's over. They're getting the ball back, 9.5 minutes to go, up 10. Jets are finished. I was a little surprised the Jets did not try a field goal in that spot because Greg Zuerlein's got such a big leg from 56 out. They're down 10. A field goal there gets it to 7. The stadium in Pittsburgh is notoriously difficult to kick in, so maybe that factored into the decision. But Zach found Corey Davis to extend the drive. He then hit Davis for a touchdown later on in that drive. And then when the Jets got the ball back, they were able to get the ball back off a tipped interception by Michael Carter II. Corey Davis had a couple huge catches that put the Jets in business before Breece Hall was able to score. And, the fourth quarter, Zach Wilson looked like a different quarterback. Now, maybe the protection was better, but Zach knew exactly where he wanted to go with the ball. Frequently, it was Corey Davis. There were a couple other receivers who had some key plays. Listen, Tyler Conklin, who has been crushed by me, he's been crushed by a lot of people, and has deserved to because he's given the Jets nothing through those first 3 games. Gave them 0 outside of garbage time. He had a key third down conversion. He actually had a couple key third down conversions in this game. So even though he was responsible for a really bad interception that changed the game, he did atone for that to a certain extent. There were other Jets receivers who stepped up, but really Zach Wilson in the fourth quarter, he looked like the guy you wanted in that lineup. He looked like the guy you were dreaming about when the Jets drafted him out of BYU. Now, it's only one game. You have to consider that. If Zach Wilson played horribly, let's say if the Jets don't make that comeback victory yesterday, let's say he continues to play, kind of okay, but not that great. Should we be hitting the panic button? No. Because Zach Wilson led this 10-point comeback, should we be getting Zach's gold jacket ready to go to Canton? No. It's the first step. No matter what happened yesterday, this is going to be a season-long story of how Zach Wilson develops. If he doesn't play well next week, if he doesn't build on that, then a lot of what happened in this game will be forgotten. But this game is the type of game you build on. This is the type of game, sometimes you look back and you say, that's where it began for this quarterback. Again, he's got to continue to grow. He's got to continue to develop. But that fourth quarter, he looks like a different quarterback. I said it through the entire offseason, even late last year. I said, I want Zach Wilson to come back, and you look at him on the field, and you say, wow, he looks completely different. Through the first three quarters, there were some areas of growth. I thought he moved better within the pocket. I think he did a better job making decisions about when to abandon the pocket, and the RPOs were better. There was also some areas where the accuracy and the decision making that weren't quite there yet. But the fourth quarter, that's where he looked like a different quarterback. That's where it was like, I don't recognize the guy from a year ago. And we'll see whether he can build on it. But anyway, a great Jets victory. Zach Wilson was not the only hero, however. And ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, I'm going to have to eat some humble pie because somebody who had a mailbag question last week was right and I was wrong. And we'll talk about that as we continue on this Monday episode. The Jets won yesterday. I'm not sure how your fantasy team did, though. And if you were playing daily fantasy and you had LaMarcus Joyner for more than 1.5 interceptions, you're probably pretty happy. And I was shocked by that result. But if you are a daily fantasy player, let me tell you about PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you want to watch. So if you want to move past the NFL, you can go to the NBA, baseball, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, men's and women's will be starting up in a few weeks. Soccer, and of course, disc golf. You can play daily fantasy for disc golf. Entries are made in 60 seconds or less. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you $100 themselves. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. The show's free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We're talking about a Jets win yesterday. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-20 in Pittsburgh, even up their record at 2-2 on the season. Zach Wilson, the number one star of the game, no question. Very exciting development for New York Jets fans, but there were some other heroes. And I have to give a big shout out to somebody who asked a mailbag question on our mailbag show last week, because they asked a question about should the Jets move Elijah Vera Tucker from right guard to left tackle, and I said no. And then whoever asked that question was absolutely right, because Elijah Vera Tucker moved to left tackle during this game. He was a surprise starter at left tackle. We thought it was going to be Connor McDermott, but the Jets decided to reshuffle the line. They put Nate Herbig in at right guard, Elijah Vera Tucker at left tackle. Guy's been moved around a lot. You have to remember, last year was a left guard. This year they moved him to right guard. Now he's moving from right guard to left tackle with just a couple days' notice. I thought he played really well. Now, the rest of the offensive line I thought was very shaky, and Zach Wilson was under pressure a lot, but I was keying in on him as I was watching the game, and I thought there was one time he got beat, but that was about it. I thought he was really solid there. So a big shout out to Elijah Vera Tucker. Of course, Corey Davis. I mentioned him. He was kind of the go-to guy for Zach Wilson on those final drives. Corey Davis, a guy who's gotten a lot of grief from this fan base. A guy who really has not lived up to what the Jets were hoping for when they signed him last year. But I remember even going back to training camp last year, Zach Wilson, when he was in a tough spot, was always looking for Corey Davis. And they developed a good chemistry in that training camp. Now, it did not always show up on the field last year, but we'll see what Zach Wilson and Corey Davis can do. Because this was a game, speaking of games you can build on, maybe Corey Davis, maybe this is a point where we look at him, and this is where he turned his Jets career around. And he was having a pretty quiet day up to those final two drives. But when the chips were down, Zach Wilson was looking for him, and he was getting open. He was making big plays. He had 4 big catches on those last 2 drives, whether you're talking the 4th down conversion, whether you're talking the touchdown that cut the lead to 3, or 2 big catches that really set the Jets up. He had a big catch on the first play of the final drive, another one that really put the Jets into scoring range. Corey Davis really stepped up in this game. And speaking of guys who have gotten a lot of grief, the two safeties. And you know what I hate what happens after a game like this? People say, oh, they got so much criticism. Well, they deserved criticism. They were awful the first 3 games. But just as you get criticism when you play poorly, you get praise when you play well. LaMarcus Joyner, a pair of interceptions. Now, one of them was a Hail Mary on the Hail Mary at the end of the game. So I don't know if that really counts. But another one that came early in the game, a nice catch. It was kind of a tipped ball. And what's interesting, the Jets had 2, I guess they had 3 interceptions yesterday on a tipped ball, because Jordan Whitehead had one on a ball Joyner tipped later on. All of them were difficult catches. Sometimes a ball gets tipped and it just floats in the air and it's like falls into a defender's lap. All 3 of them were defenders making plays on the ball. Jordan Whitehead did later on a pass. Joyner broke up, and Joyner had a game-ending interception. Also, Michael Carter II had a huge interception on a tipped ball that kind of set the Jets up, gave them a shot in the fourth quarter. All of the tipped balls the Jets had interceptions on were guys reading the play perfectly, plays that were not guaranteed interceptions. So nice job by the Jets players on defense. And LaMarcus Joyner, a guy who's been getting a lot of grief, and rightly so, I might add. I'm not going to lecture everybody because I've been crushing Joyner as much as everybody, so I don't want to hear lectures about how this guy has gotten so much criticism, because he's been awful prior to this point, but he was great in that game. And Jordan Whitehead, again, he had a big interception. And, the Jets did not, on defense, part of it was Pittsburgh was just not good offensively. Mitchell Trubisky and then later Kenny Pickett came in. They were struggling. Pittsburgh just does not really have a big play offense, but we've seen the Jets give up a lot. 2 weeks ago, the Jets gave up 30 to a backup quarterback. Last week, they were awful against Cincinnati. Jets defense did what they needed to do in this game to get a victory. Another guy I'm going to give a shout out to, even though his numbers don't really stand out that big on the stat sheet, but that's Breece Hall. And this season's kind of going the way I thought it was going to go, where Michael Carter is the lead back early on, but slowly during the course of the season, you see Breece Hall begin to figure it out, begin to pick things up. And that's what he did in this game. In front of an offensive line that was really not very good. Hall did pick up 66 yards on 17 carries, broke a number of big runs in this game, and had the game-winning touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Now, it was a play where he extended the ball at the goal line, a little loose with the football there. He was stripped after he crossed the plane. You don't love to see that. I guess it's what scored them the touchdown, but play that made you a little bit more nervous than it should have been, because he left the ball exposed. That's one of those plays you get praised if you cross the goal line. You get criticized if you get stripped before you get over the goal line. But it feels like Breece Hall is starting to take over as the number 1 back, and that's a trend I personally see continuing moving forward. And you see guys I've mentioned. I think Elijah Moore made a few plays. Garrett Wilson made a few plays. This young skill player group for the Jets, filling in around Zach Wilson, starting to look really solid. And again, the defense did their job in this game. Just an all-around really solid performance for the Jets. What does it mean, however? I think we always look for the meaning in every victory the Jets have. And ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast on this Monday, we'll talk about what our takeaways long-term can be from this victory. That's as we continue this Monday game recap as the Jets beat the Steelers yesterday in Pittsburgh 24-20. Well, after a great Jets victory, you got to find a way to celebrate. Sometimes you might just want to have something delicious. And may I suggest Built Bar? And if you haven't tried the new Built Puffs yet, you're really depriving yourself of one of the greatest joys in life. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Are you ready? It's delicious, indulgent cookie dough. It's covered in chocolate. Built has done it again. And the new favorite, cookie dough chunk puffs, have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course they're covered in 100% real chocolate, just like every other Built Bar is. If you're a cookie dough fan, you gotta have it. I gotta tell you, I've tasted them. They're absolutely delicious, as are all Built bars, though. And what's great about Built is that their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and it provides tons of health benefits. You can eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So try out the new cookie dough chunk puffs, or whatever Built bar you like. They're all at Built.com. And while you're there, use promo code LOCKED15. If you do that, you'll get 15% off your order. Again, it's promo code LOCKED15. It's one word with no space, LOCKED, number 1, number 5, for 15% off at Built, BUILT.com. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday, recapping a Jets victory 24-20 over the Steelers. Zach Wilson leading a 10-point fourth quarter comeback in his season debut. Just words that are beautiful to say, and I'm sure words that are beautiful to hear. The Jets' young quarterback leading a comeback, looking great in the fourth quarter. What does it mean moving forward? This is the type of game that can really swing a season. Because the Jets lose this game, they blow a 10-point lead, they're 1-3. You get that feeling of dread around you, like, oh my goodness, here we go again. Another season that's heading down the drain. 1-3, your odds of making the playoffs are very low. Now listen, do we think the Jets are a playoff team this year? I would guess probably not. But you want the Jets to be relevant. We talk all the time about how the Jets have not been in the playoffs since 2010. The Jets really haven't been relevant in the playoff discussion since 2015. They've had all these games, they've won games, they've had good winning streaks here or there, but it's never really felt like they were making any noise. Back in 2017, that was a year many pundits thought the Jets would be the worst team in the league. They had a 3-game winning streak early in the season. They ended up, they started 0-2, then they won 3 in a row. They got their record to 3-2 and played a tight game against New England in game number 6, but they never really built on it. 3-2 was the high water mark that season. And it was, they kind of fell apart. They finished 5-11. A couple years later, they went to 3-3 with Sam Darnold's rookie year, but that team never really made any noise. 2019, they've won 6 of their last 8 games, but they began 1-7. Despite winning 6 of their last 8, despite finishing 7-9, right around 500, that team was never really in the playoff race. The goal for this season is to be relevant. I mean, the Jets have used the term playing meaningful December football. You want to be in the playoff race. At 2-2, listen, I just gave you a couple seasons where the Jets got off to a decent start early in the season, where they were at 500 or better at this point or later in the season. So it doesn't guarantee anything, but it keeps the Jets in the mix. They're not 1-3. They're not 0-4 like they've been in recent years. They got a shot to make some noise. They're still in the mix in the playoffs. So that's big. But it's also about how they got here, because some of those other winning streaks I mentioned, now 2018 starting 3-3, Sam Darnold had played a couple good games, but you never really felt like it was because young players were developing. And that's the reason the Jets have won these 2 games. Yeah, I know Flacco played the Cleveland game, but a lot of that was Garrett Wilson delivering. A lot of that was Garrett Wilson, having his breakout game. This was not such a great game for Garrett Wilson, but it was for Zach Wilson, the other Wilson, the more important Wilson. And when you're winning because your young franchise quarterback's leading a 10-point comeback after sitting out the first 3 games, that's exciting. That's something to build on. And of course, none of this matters if the Jets go out next week against Miami and get blown out and they fall down a 3-game winning streak. And then, a few years from now, we may be discussing this as another example of a false start. This might be another 3-game winning streak in 2017. It might be another 3-3 start in 2018. It might be another 6 out of the final 8 in 2019. But the Jets are in business now. 2-2, I think most people said when they saw that schedule come out, they saw the 4 AFC North teams. If the Jets can get through these first 4 weeks 2-2, they'll be in shot. They'll have a shot. They'll be in position to make a playoff, at least stay in the playoff race through much of the season. They've accomplished that, and they did it with Joe Flacco playing 3 games. So there's a lot to fix for this Jets team. And there are bigger challenges that await. If we're being objective, that's one of the worst opponents the Jets are going to play all year. This Pittsburgh team is not a vintage Pittsburgh team. This might be the Pittsburgh team that finally has a losing record this year. They've got issues, especially at the quarterback position. And as much as I liked what the Jets defense did yesterday, it was not a tough test. But in years past, the Jets were the team everybody beat up on. The Jets were actually able to take advantage of another team being not so great. That shows that maybe there's progress. Maybe you got some young players developing. I mentioned Breece Hall stepping up. I think Jermaine Johnson, as much criticism as there was of him through training camp in the preseason, and I'm not saying Jermaine Johnson's playing at an all-pro level. I think Jermaine Johnson's playing pretty well. Every time you see him in a game, he's making a play or two. You're seeing young guys step up. Elijah Moore, maybe Elijah Moore is not having the 1,200-yard season we wanted, but he's also not invisible. He's looking like a quality starting receiver at the very least. And Elijah Vera Tucker, a guy the Jets asked a lot from yesterday, and you have to watch the film always, but a guy who's really having a good season, a guy who played much, and again, full credit to the person who asked that mailbag question, because you got it right and I got it wrong. But Elijah Vera Tucker, really impressing me this year. Even before the move, I thought he had a good first couple weeks at the right guard position. So as much as it's the Jets being 500 at this point, it's how they got there. And they're getting there because it feels like young players are developing. And I talked this week, the Jets were getting more from their veteran free agents outside of DJ Reed. We could really be talking about the Jets making a playoff run this year. So, maybe some of these veterans begin stepping up. Maybe if Joyner builds on this game and Whitehead builds on this game, then we could be in business. But if you're going to get to 2-2, you hope it's because the young players are playing well and developing, because it gives you some hope. And I got to say, this was a rough week for the fan base. Losing that game to Cincinnati the way the Jets did, it brought back a lot of the old memories. Winning this game the way the Jets did, with their young quarterback leading a fourth quarter comeback from double digits down, That's going to get people excited. That's going to bring optimism back, at least for 1 week. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. Big shout out to subscribers to this podcast. To join that group, just hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. You'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give the show, please subscribe to the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. It helps the channel out, and it helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Monday, everybody. Enjoy the Victory Monday. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.